Okay, good morning. It's 8:40 a.m. on Monday, July 22nd, 2024. Just wanted to make a quick note. I've spent the last 2.5 hours working on this book, How to Hate Evil. And I don't know, it was just like a light bulb went off. I started reading through the notes, following it, and pulled on a thread and ended up writing 4 pages or 5 pages, something like that. Of notes and illustrations on how this all works in our physiology, in our body, and documented what I see as an illustration of the human being and the interaction of the flesh and the spirit, and the introduction of the flux capacitor. I love it. I think that's really going to connect because it just makes so much sense. And then how the interior, the self, the cosmic consciousness, as I call it, of a human being is the interior of this being, and the exterior is our flesh, our physical presentation in the world and representation in the world, and in between those I call the flux capacitor. Some would call this the mind. So you get the body, soul, the spirit, and mind. And this flux capacitor differentiation, really, this model really becomes functional when you identify the influences, because it's the pass-through, it's the filter, it's the gate, that which opens and closes. And so you have a lot of these mechanistic processes that take place, that we recognize take place. Psychology recognizes these things. In spiritual disciplines, we recognize these things, and we talk about them all the time. But I don't know that I've seen a valid illustration of this and mechanically how this works. And what's really fascinating to me is when I break this down, how functional it is and how useful it is to describe this this process. And ironically, how similar it is to the human cell. And I think that that actually supports this whole concept in terms of, a basis for validity, because you could look at how the human cell operates and its defense mechanisms, and how it grows and maintains its health, and and also how it fights off the external, negative influences, and maintains its health. I really need to do a deep dive on that, because I think there is when we understand that aspect of design, I think we can look for symmetry. We can look for the analogies to this spirit, because God is thematic in his creation. Yes, there are variations. There's wonderful and beautiful variations, but the theme is really predominant. And when we look at any good artist, any good engineer, they're going to be thematic in their expression, and that thematic is going to be holistic. It's going to have all of the factors nicely addressed and intricately woven together and choreographed to work together in flawless fashion. And that's what we see in the human cell. So why wouldn't we also see that same mechanism in the aspect of our being, of who we are, and the essence of our spiritual self? And I think this whole process is a discovery process now of how to hate evil. In other words, how to be healthy, how to eliminate evil from our, how to get rid of toxins, how to get rid of parasites, how to do these things from a holistic, spiritual, natural point. And I think the introduction of this flux capacitor methodology of illustrative technique for describing this process avails a really, really broad base of outreach, because it'll explain why there's results through multiple domains, why we don't just get results through Christian ministry, why we don't just get results through psychology, why do we see results through all these other domains. And we see the results because there are multiple pathways into this process, because it is it's a biological, physical, cosmic capacitor. It's a biological, physical, and cosmic conduit. That's a good way to put it. And control center. So good and evil pass through, but then the mind, the flux capacitor, retains. It has the ability to retain memory and has the ability to impact and affect the filter, but it's influenced both externally and internally. So the physical sees something that is arousal oriented, it opens up to the self, says, hey, this looks really cool, what do you think about this? And then the self inside says, oh yeah, by all means, let's go for it, 100%. Boom, there you go. Or the self can say, no, read Proverbs chapter 7, young man. Oh, okay, shut that down. You see how that works? The there's a there's that dynamic. Now that really needs to be explored. Which one has predominance? Does the spirit have control of the flesh, or the flesh control of the spirit? And here we go into Romans 7 and 8, right? But I think the ultimately what controls is we make the decision, and it is, I think it can be demonstrated that cosmic consciousness, that self, that is the decision maker over the flesh. Because the flesh is the input, the flesh is the suggestion, the flesh is that that enticing object. Then it passes through the filter and it goes into this a decision making model. Now, what's influencing that decision? What's there in the self? And we can use this illustration to show the different mixture of dynamics that can be floating around in that space. And this is really, really illustrative of this. I think that I'm really excited about this, because as we look at that, we can see the type of decisions, okay. That's Christopher calling. I'm going to get this now, because he might have found out what's going on with this thing. All right, that's all.